Hello, this is Vedic Ghost. If you came to this lovely stream, this is a subscriber request that somebody wanted me to do. So I decided to wrap up a couple topics with this request because I got a couple other requests too. Well, not really a request, but I might as well wrapped it up into a nice bow with all the rest of these because they all fit together. Um, this stream and request was brought to you by um one of my lovely subscribers, Captain Brandon Punk and Horror Lover. You'll see him in my comment section. He'll always ask me different questions. He'll always comment on my comments, stuff along the lines of that. You might see him under other Manosphere channels as well too. But he sent me this request basically asking um about women that refer to men as losers, basically, and he went on to comment about other things on that as well as too. The is irony is there's a lot of women that actually do this stuff on a regular basis. And the sad part about that, as men, you have to be able to mitigate these problems and understand where they're coming from as human beings. Hence the title of this lovely live stream. And if you haven't done it yet, like, subscribe, and share. This will be on the Vedic Ghost channel, and this will be on the Internal Sadist channel, as well as Twitch. So follow me on Twitch if you're over there watching from Twitch. The problem, the title of this lovely thing is the psychology. Is the psychology of women, basically. It's basically all about female nature and why you get put into certain categories in boxes, basically, as a man. So it's basically female projection and psychology is the name of this lovely live stream. Um, the topics that we're going to go over today in this lovely live stream are going to be topics that we're going to go over today are going to be female projection, loser men, accountability men, interesting men, sexy men, and my final thoughts as always. So enjoy this lovely stream. I'm gonna start the stream off by talking about why is it that men always end up a lot of men end up in the messes that they're in when it comes to women. And typically it's one of those things where you have to understand the overall psychology of women to know and do so. So typically what happens is a man that gets called a loser, for all intents and purposes, is nothing more than a female projecting her own insecurities on another man. And it also goes with mating preferences as well too. Because the sad part about that is, which is actually another video I'm going to actually do probably at about 1 a.m. 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time later for all intents and purposes. But typically it all comes down to projection. Because what I found about loser men is the reason why a lot of men get called losers, or a lot of men that get skipped over for other men, is women hate to be held accountable. This actually goes into the accountability men, because the sad part about that, a lot of these loser men hold women accountable, or a lot of these loser and half the loser men basically let women just walk all over them and use them for various things, for all intents purposes. The sad part about that is when it happens, the men don't know how to either a mitigate it or stop it from happening, or you know the men who actually hold women accountable are seen as losers or abusive or anything else under the sun to make it so she never has to be accountable. This is typically why I'm very stringent when it comes to female friends, because I hold them accountable. And this is the reason why I'll go through female friends on a regular basis every year. I always have this thing where I'm getting rid of female friends at the end, is my New Year's resolution every year, because of this, because they lack the accountability and they lack the ability to take responsibility for their actions. They always put it off, or they always make excuses, or they pretend as if they are accountable or, or anything about them. They basically become chameleons. So a lot of the people a lot of the females, I talked about this in another video, a lot of the females who claim they're my friends are typically either acting like chameleons. They pretend like they understand their fuck ups and their past mistakes when in fact they really don't. There's only a very small subsection of female friends that I actually have who actually acknowledge that they fucked up in the past and they're actually real about it. Whereas the rest of them, they're fake about it or they pretend like they acknowledge it and or they're getting over it or working on it or making it better. Typically, if you're going to be my friend, there's always that layer of accountability. This is typically what sets dating me apart from actually being my friend. Because if you're a woman, you have a better chance of dating me if you can't be held, if you're not going to be accountable for your actions versus if you're going to be my best friend, because I hold friends at a higher standard than I hold the women that I'm dating. So typically, if you're my friend, you got held to a higher standard, you've been through the forge and fire, and you basically made it. I'm basically telling you this so you can understand the whole entire female dynamic on why men are called losers. This is typically, if you're my friend, you've been put to the forge, you've been put to the forge and fire, and you came out a strong weapon or individual or object that I actually can use and rely on for all intents purposes as a friend for all intents purposes, or like a stick or walking stick or a sword or a gun or anything that can be forged to be hard as hell and to be steady and reliable for all intents purposes. That's typically how I see my friends. This is typically why I hold my friends to higher esteem than I hold my significant other. I'm more likely to drop whatever the significant other wants to do for whatever my friends want to do because my friends have been forged and fired and they've proven themselves time and time again for all intents purposes. So these are my friends and they'll never go. You're more likely to go because you're my significant other than my friends are. And that's typically how it works because friends are hard to come by. So throwing around a friends title in this day and age makes it so, women can feel as though that they're special or they got something going on in their lives when in fact they really don't. This is typically why social media This is typically why, what's up, Mark Williams? This is typically why you find a lot of women on social media with quote unquote friends. This is basically how women view their friends and dating for all intents purposes. They throw out their problems on social media so all the beta boys can all come in and give them cosign on their fuckery for all intents purposes because ain't none of them going to hold them accountable. A good example of that is when I play Smash or Pass and people drag me into it because they love my responses to various women, especially when they drug me into stupid groups to do this shit on Facebook. It's always funny watching a woman response when you say pass on her. The funniest shit in the world. It's also funny watching the male responses for all the beta boy simps on YouTube. Their responses are the funniest shit too. Matter of fact, their responses are even more funnier than the women's responses because they go to bat for this woman and they be trying to talk shit on you just so they can look like the hero and shit like that. And you got them you got the females under the comment section talking about, thank you, such and such. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's typically how it is. And it's the funniest shit in the whole entire world to watch because I'm sitting there busting out laughing while all these people are mad as hell around me. Because typically, that's the type of person I am. I like getting laughs out of everything. I don't give a damn if somebody falls, trips, dies, gets killed, decapitated. It don't matter. I'm laughing. I'm getting my 7 damn chuckles out of this shit, whether you like it or not. It might be wrong to you, but fuck you, it's funny to me. And that's typically the type of person I am. So if a person gets beat up in public, I'm laughing. If a person falls in public, I'm laughing. If a person gets hit by a car in public, I'm laughing. If a person falls down the stairs in public, I'm laughing. I'm laughing in general. That's generally the type of person I am. And the sad part about that is, believe it or not, in the same token, women are no different because they're sadistic just as much. They're sadistic. They're not as on the level of sadism as I am, but they're very sadistic because they're the type of people that like to get two men to fight each other and then watch the fight unfold for all intents and purposes. Like I've seen fights where, you know, a girlfriend's Chad boyfriend got his ass whooped, and she was embarrassed because her quote unquote Chad boyfriend got his ass whooped. Um, just got his ass straight whooped. I've seen it happen many times. I've seen quote unquote Chads get their ass whooped by nerds, betas, you name it. And like they're they're Chads and they're tough and they're all this stuff basically. And I remember the one time I was at this one place called the Attic. This big ass dude, lift weights, every damn thing, big as hell, cock diesel, pretty boy face, got mollywopped by this 5'6", probably like 130-pound soaking wet dude. Literally just mollywopped the fuck out of this guy. Drug this big ass dude all over the fucking bar by his fucking ankles and his neck, and kicked the shit out of it, kicked him in the face every time, and beat him with every single damn near object in the fucking bar that he could hit him with. It was the funniest fight I've ever seen, and I was security, and I was busting out laughing so fucking hard I didn't break it up because it was funny as fuck. now, Chad girlfriend was embarrassed that her boyfriend got beat up, so she left the club and left her Chad boyfriend to his own devices, you know. And I don't know if they're talking till this day, but he got mollywopped by this little nerdy kid from like this little nerdy STEM kid, basically. I mean, he whooped his ass. He put it on this boy. It was the funniest fight I ever seen. Like I've seen some funny fights in my days, but that was the funniest. It kind of ranked up there with my grandma dragging my big ass uncle around the table by his neck type thing, where like this little ass person beating up this big ass person and literally manhandling him like a rag doll. Funny shit. But I say that to tell you that women have the same mentality as that, because the sad part about that, the reason why those two were fighting in the first fucking place was because of her. So women typically have this mentality where they want the hunter gatherer protector type man, and it's typically innate. So the sad part about that is women were never held accountable. Well, back in the day, they weren't really. People always talk about, well, back in the day they were held accountable. They were never held accountable. Even back in the day, they were never really held accountable. Even if they fucked up something in the house, they weren't held accountable. If they paid a bill too late, or they paid a bill too early, or they double paid a bill, they were never held accountable. That's typically how society works. They were never held accountable. And it's one of those things that go on till this day. And it's even worse in this day and age where women were never held accountable. So the problem with a lot of loser men, half the loser men population, is the reason why they're loser men is because they hold women accountable, and women don't want to be held accountable. This is typically what I was talking about when it comes to my female friends. This is typically why I have a revolving door of these fake ass female friends. I just got rid of like 10 this year. I'll probably pick up another 10. I'll pick up another 10 or 20 this year, and I'll probably get rid of them too, basically. So it's one of those things where, you know, I pick up a bunch of female friends, they get rotated out and kicked out by the end of every year, basically. So it's basically like think of it like a job, basically, where they do your annually review on you, basically, for your raises, basically. This is typically how I treat my friends. You get yearly annual raises, or you get yearly annual bonuses. Your bonus is basically to stick around and be my friend, basically, or you get kicked out, basically, and put on your ass, basically, and you're no longer my friend. So I take my friendships very seriously. If you can't live up to those standards, you get kicked out and put on your ass, and you sit there wondering what happened to us as friends, when in fact we were never friends. So it's one of those things where I give you a chance to prove yourself to me, because I'm the same consistent person across the board, and I can tell when a person is being fake. So I give you your chance to earn my trust to be my friend. I'll never call you my friend. You always call me your friend. But the minute I call you a friend, that's when you know you're my friend. It's basically like a man saying I love you in a relationship. The minute a man actually says I love you, you know that shit is very serious. Typically, men don't say I love you unless it's serious, basically, unless they're actually feeling it at that moment. Typically, men keep it inside or never really say it. real men. Masculine men never say it. It's basically the same concept with me when I say you're my friend, or I say I consider you a friend. That lets you know that that my very thoughts on our friendship for all intents purposes. And it's true. Trust is more important than the average friend. And I was actually trying to explain this to two women at a bar that because they were asking me, I don't understand why men are so rough with women or assholes to women. I go, it depends on the person. Like, because I referred to Wen, my friend Wen, and myself. I'm a mercenary, and Wen's in the Marines. Anytime you're dealing with somebody that has formal training like that, military or Marines, or anything special forces or anything like that, you're typically going to be treated a certain way until you earn that person's trust. Because at the end of the day, just because they don't wear the uniform or they're not in combat, that doesn't mean they treat everybody else differently outside the uniform. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to Marines, special forces, or mercenaries, we typically treat everybody the same across the board, as if we're still in a combat uh we're still in a combat zone. Everything's a combat zone to us, basically. So we need to know that we can actually trust you to have our backs at the end of the fucking day. Or if you're not some flaky, goofy fucker, basically. So typically what happens is we'll put you through your paces, or we'll treat you a certain way to weed out the weak people. It's almost like washing out the military in a way. Basically, you're washing out friends, basically. So you're washing out your friends that are fake friends, basically. This is the reason why, if you ever notice, me and Wen are very standoffish with certain groups of people. Typically, a lot of military men are hardline when it comes to shit like this, because they need to know that you have their six. At any given time, when all hell breaks loose and shit hits the fan, they need to know you have their six. This is typically why we're very hard with people, and very hard with women, and very hard with anybody that's around us. If you ever notice, me and Wen typically have the same mindset when it comes to certain things, people that are around us. Wen may not always verbally say it, but you could tell by Wen's stance when it comes to certain things, that Wen has that same disposition when it comes to random people just joining us and wanting to have fun with us. We typically need to know that you have our back and we can trust you. That's typically, so me and Wen will always be the hardest on people when it comes down to it, no matter if you like it or not. Like that goes for any military man. That goes for men that are special forces, SEAL Team 6, Army Rangers, mercenaries, contract security firm people, basically government contract security firm people, Marines. I already said that. People along the lines of that have extra training, or have a more training than the normal people, like your army, your army, and everybody else. Basically, they go for training a little bit longer for this reason. So typically, we're hard on people. So people like us get put in a different category because we hold everybody accountable, and we like everybody to be accountable. It's kind of like what True Sherm said about me a while ago in a stream that I put up on his channel. It's a snippet of the stream. Tico strikes me as the type of person that expects you to carry your own weight. No bones about it. That's pretty much Tico in a nutshell. That's literally what he said. So if you're not carrying your weight, you can't expect him to be nice to you, kiss your ass, or hold you up, basically, if you're not carrying your own weight properly. And that's literally me in a nutshell. I expect you to carry your own weight, and if you're not going to do it, you can't expect me to be nice to you. At the end of the day, I hold the flame to everybody's feet, even my own feet. As Hidden MGTOW, I put the flame to his feet many times. I put the flame to Yam's feet many times. I put the flame to, MGTOW to Win's feet, Double Ass feet. Everybody that rolls with me, they've had the flames put to their feet on a couple of occasions. So Anybody in my inner circle or anybody that rolls with me, I've held the flame. I've literally held the fire flame. I literally held their feet to the fire, basically, at the end of the day. So I expect them to carry their own weight based on who their personality and I know them to be. The minute they start being fake, the minute they start being phony, the minute they start, doing some off the wall shit, then I typically start, you know, roasting motherfuckers. Literally, that's typically how I've always been. So if you can't hold your weight, you can't expect me to be nice to you. You can't expect me to kiss your ass, and you can't expect anything from me if you're not holding your weight. So that goes for anybody that got bitch stink, or that goes for anybody who likes to make up elaborate plans to do stupid shit around me. Basically, this is technically the type of men that women either fear or hate. They fear and hate men that hold them accountable. They hate men who they refer to as losers for this manner and this manner as well too, because typically these loser men don't meet the requirements now, but they'll meet the requirements in the future. These are typically men that these loser men are the same men that they keep around to basically support them, to be the shoulder that they need somebody to cry on, and all this other great shit, to get them nice things and other things like that. It is what it is. So what you can't do around women is be that yes man, or you can't be that, that shoulder to cry on, or you can't be that person that's always there for their beck and call. You can't be that person, because typically women hate people like that, and they use people like that. On the flip side to the loser men, you got the men that hold women accountable. They're losers because they're mean, because they held her accountable. They're losers because they don't let her get away with bullshit, basically. So they're loser men within that rights for this reason, because women don't like to be held accountable at the end of the day. They just don't. They don't like to be held accountable in any way, shape, or form. What's up, Hidden? What's up, a manly load? They don't like to be held accountable in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. So typically, men that hold women accountable are seen as losers. And on top of that, men that hold women accountable, women fear men who hold them accountable at the end of the day. Yeah, I like you, manly load. I like you, because that's the reason. Because the sad part about that is you've actually proven yourself time and time again in streams, in the comment section, and in live streams with other people. You've proven yourself time and time again. So I typically like you for that reason. Just like Ability to Go. He's proven himself time and time again in streams over and over again, and he hasn't changed. So he's always consistent, just like you're always consistent. This is why I'm always happy to do live streams with you guys, for this reason. You've proven yourselves time and time again. That's why. So it's one of those things where you have to actually understand what's going on around you and understand the context in which you're being placed in to be that. And there's no need to cry, a manly note. But at the end of the day, a lot of women will paint you in a category as a loser because their fifis got hurt, or because you're mean for holding them accountable and shit along the lines of that. This is typically why a lot of people get looked over or skipped over when it comes to relationships, for all intents and purposes. This is exactly why a lot of men get called losers, or women don't date a lot of the men, because women fear. Because like it's kind of like the same concept. A good example of that is how women say men fear a strong independent woman. That's nothing more than projection, because women actually fear a man that actually holds them accountable. You see what I'm saying? That whole entire women fear a strong, independent woman is false. It's nothing more than a projection of women fearing men who hold them accountable at the end of the day. Is the best way I could actually describe it to you. And it's the best way I can actually put it to you in words. So anytime you hear a woman say that, they fear they've been a man's held them accountable, and now they're upset. So now they're using that to legitimize the fuckery and bullshit that they got going on in their mind for the mental gymnastic purposes, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who fear men who hold them accountable. And typically these men are the ones who are independent and won't take no shit from them. They're not like the Chads and Tyrones, basically. They don't take any shit from them, because the sad part about that, Chad and Tyrone will take shit from them. Chad and Tyrone will call them to get some booty and got to listen to some bullshit, basically. Whereas men who hold women accountable don't even listen to them, or will typically do some shit like me with my one friend who was crying to me, who wanted to cry to me about her boyfriend who is cheating on her married boyfriend who is cheating on her with a third girl. Now, mind you, she's a side piece. He's married. She's trying to cry to me about her boyfriend cheating on her with another man. Typically what I did when I got to the bar, after she said that, I literally put my knife on a counter because she was contemplating suicide, and I told her not to call me ever again until you sort yourself out, basically. Don't call me ever again, basically. So she was talking about suicide, so I put my knife on the table so she can have a great way of actually committing suicide, basically. So I literally put my knife on the table, on the counter, and walked out and drank my drink and didn't even listen to what she had to say because I knew it was bullshit, basically. This is basically how I treat female friends. Anytime they say some stupid shit to me, I typically put them on blast, or I make them prove to me that they really feel this type of way about what they say they're going to do. So she said she wanted to commit suicide. So I literally put my knife on the counter, I drank my drink, and I walked out the door. Didn't listen to nothing else she had to say, got up and walked. So this is how hard I am on my friends when it comes down to it. If I think you're lying and you're not finna do no stupid shit like that, I typically put you on blast in a heartbeat. Hold on a second. And I make you prove that you're about that life for all intents and purposes. Because typically I'm from Latin America. So if you tell me you finna do something, oh, you better do it. And it's typically how I am. Because it's one of those things where I'm always weighing a friend, basically. I mean, there are certain friends I don't weigh anymore because they've pretty much already been weighed. They've pretty much already tested. And they pretty much passed all the tests for all intents and purposes. But typically there's a lot of friends that still need to be weighed and measured and tested, basically. That's still trying to make it as my friend. And it is what it is. This is typically why, which brings me to my next point. This is typically why MGTOW and Red Pill gets picked on the most, because they hold women accountable. They say all the stuff that women do and say, and this is basically why, quote unquote, MGTOW and Red Pill hate women for this very reason, because we're willing to hold their feet to the fire and, say what they're all about and say what they really mean and hold them accountable. This is typically why they say we hate them. This is typically why they say all the mean things about MGTOW, Red Pill men. This is also another reason why SYSBM get picked on behind their backs for this very reason, because they hold them accountable. If you're not willing to step up and be a better person around these type of men, they're willing to actually, go to another team and play for another team. And it is what it is for all intents and purposes. And this is typically why a lot of women feel some type of way about SYSBM and any man who basically supports passport game or, traveling abroad to find something, basically, let it be white, black, Puerto Rican, Chinese, Asian, Arab, whatever the fuck you are. There's a lot of men that are starting to use their passports and their finances and moving abroad to actually broaden their horizons for all intents purposes. Another reason why a lot of men hate SYSBM men is not because of the fact that they're willing to just pick up and move, the fact that they're willing to open businesses and they're business starters and they'll open their own business elsewhere while in that country to support their lifestyle for all intents purposes. So a lot of them will pick up and move to other countries and then open up businesses and jobs that are very successful to actually support their lifestyle. A lot of them would, get their necessary certificates so they can stay in that country and support themselves while in that country. So these men are a lot of these men are go-getters, and they typically go out and get what they want and need in life. At the end of the day, it's sad, but it's so true. But when it comes down to it, this is typically, like I said, women hate men like this for this reason, because they'll call them out, they'll tell them about themselves, and now the women feel some type of way. It is what it is. So, what's up, AZ the King? So, typically, when you run into a lot of women who do this type of shit, you got one or two choices. Either you get rid of them, or you let them get rid of you. Typically, it's one of those things where I just stop talking to those women and I'll just ghost them. If I don't feel as though they're good enough friends or they're comparable enough friends to be called a friend, even though they're calling me their friend, I typically just ghost them. It's pretty much how I've always been. A guy that tries to be my friend, I'll at least give him the benefit of the doubt to, learn from his mistakes and probably grow as a human being. But women, no, I don't give them no chances. I give them no fair chances, basically. Because the sad part about that was with a man, if you don't tell a man something, a man's not going to change or try to alter or try to fix a certain behavior that you don't like if you don't tell him. As with a woman, she'll try to make it a mouthpiece or a talking point to tell you why you're wrong or why you hate them, basically. As with a man, they'll typically tell you, oh, yeah, sorry about that, pimpin'. I'll try to correct that next time, this, that, and the other. That's pretty much women that's pretty much men in a nutshell and women in a nutshell. If you tell a woman that you don't like something she does, she'll go tell her friends, she'll put it on social media, she'll do all this extra shit instead of actually trying to fix herself. She'll spend all this energy trying to make you look bad and instead of trying to spend the least amount of energy to make yourself a good human being. Basically is how it works. So it ends up being one of those things that this is the reason why they're in the mess that they're in at the end of the day. So women would do all this extra shit. So I don't give women no chance or no fear. I don't give women a chance at all when it comes to it. So it's either you are or you're not when it comes down to it if you're a woman. It's a guy, I'll give you a fair warning, at least. Women, I'll give you slight warnings. A slight warning. Because women are good at, social cues, but if you ignore my social cues or my body language, you're pretty much getting axed at the end of the year for all intents and purposes. Whereas with a man, I'll actually give a man an up and up fair warning before they get fucked up, basically, verbally or physically. And that's always how I've always been. That's always how I've always been. And that's always how I've always been with friends. So typically women hate men who hold them accountable. This is typically why I can't keep female friends around. And this is typically why there's always a revolving door of females in my life. Luckily, I'm not dating any of them or banging any of them because I would be a whore right now. And I'd probably have a body count up in the fucking... I'll probably have a body count up in at least the 500s or 600s or 700s if I banged every single woman I've had as a quote unquote friend and I kicked out and rotated out at the end of the year, my body count would at least be what, like 700? If I banged every single last one of those women who called themselves my friend, my body count would be about 700, to be honest with you. And I'm not bragging. That's literally how many female friends have been rotated in and out of my life on a regular basis at the end of every single year. And there's women that are still here that earn their spot, but there are women that, you know, are on thin ice that are going to be kicked out probably by the middle of this year or by next year for all intents and purposes, depending on their actions. Like there are women that I've just kicked out that I've met, you know, towards the end of the year, and they've been gone. They're gone now for all intents and purposes for this reason, because I can't do people who aren't willing to. What's up, True Sherm? Truth bombs, South Africa. McTown to win. Yeah, so there's a lot of women that I treat that call themselves my friends, that become my friends for a short period of time, and I just cycle out or rotate out at the end of every year. That's pretty much that in a nutshell when it comes down to it. But, you know, and that goes with the actual topics, because there's a lot of women who will try their best to, you know, it's basically women projection, basically, at the end of the day, when you see them do that. So when a woman says they hate women, men are scared of women that are strong and independent, that's basically a projection of them telling you that they're scared of men who hold them accountable. That's all that is. That's basically what that means. That's all that fucking means. That's all that would ever mean. And it's basically code for I'm scared of men who hold me accountable, and I hate men who hold me accountable. That's all it really is. There's really no man that's afraid of a strong, independent woman. They typically just don't date them, or they pretty much avoid them because they're annoying as fuck, basically. Any woman that says they're strong and independent, I've never met one who actually claimed that they were strong and independent who wasn't annoying as fuck. All women who claim they're strong and independent, or strong or independent, or they do their own thing, or annoying as fuck. They annoy the fuck out of you, and typically they'll say, well, men are scared of me. No, you're annoying as fuck. That's typically why men leave you behind, because you're annoying. It'd be no different if a man heard an annoying sound. He would either get rid of the annoying sound or, you know, move to a whole nother country or state to avoid the annoying sound if he hates the annoying sound. He'll move across state to avoid the annoying sound. Matter of fact, he won't even talk to you at work to avoid your annoying voice, basically. And that's typically how men are. Men will basically fix the problem that is the problem to them, and they'll get rid of the problem, basically. It's like, oh, she's a problem. Okay, not my friend no more, don't really care, ghosting that bitch. That's typically how men are. That's always how men been. They're not scared of anybody. They basically just get rid of annoying things to them. So you can't say a man is annoying for this reason, when in fact you're the one that's actually. I mean, men are scared of a strong, independent women, or strong or independent women, or, you know, women who do their own thing, when in fact they're not. You're just annoying as fuck. Because the sad part about that, the real women who are strong and independent don't have to advertise that they're strong and independent. It's kind of like what I say about gangsters. Real gangsters don't have to tell you that they're gangster. You basically already know that they're fucking gangster. Real human beings don't never have to tell you that they're real, because you pretty much know they're fucking real. That's pretty much how it works at the end of the day. So you can't sit up here and say all this ridiculous bullshit. You can't sit up here and say all this ridiculous bullshit when in fact it's bullshit at the end of the day. It's nothing more than bullshit. I need everybody who says all this extra shit to shut the fuck up, basically, because you're not. And you're fake. Just like women who say that they're strong and independent aren't really strong and independent. Just like women who claim that that they're happy and proud of their bodies, and they're very positive with their body, and they're happy with their body. If you don't like it, that's just too bad. The same way they get their fucking feelings hurt and they want to ban everybody from their fucking comment sections. It's pretty much what it is. Oh, you lost some more weight. Nice, True Charm. And the sad part about that, on Dino. But and the sad part about that is when it comes down to it, um, and the sad part about that, when it comes down to women, they typically do this on purpose because they don't want to ever admit that they're wrong. They don't ever want to admit, they don't ever want to be held accountable, or they don't want to be accountable for their actions or deeds. So typically they either fake like they're accountable for their actions or deeds when they're not accountable for their actions and deeds. This is typically why half the loser men are losers, because they hold women accountable, whereas the other half are only losers because the women themselves who refer to them as losers are the fucking losers, which is another projection that a lot of women do. So if a woman calls a man a loser, even if he's doing good things with his life and he's doing big things with his life and he gets good grades, it's because she's the fucking loser. Like a good example, a man who does good in school in a black community typically calls a loser or a lame. The sad part about that, the reason why he's called a loser and a lame is because everybody else around him are failures, basically. And that's typically how that works in black neighborhoods. So in a black neighborhood, if a man's being called a loser and a lame, it's because everybody else are failures at life in a black community. And that's typically how that shit fucking works. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, women hate being held accountable, and women can't stand men who are responsible and accountable. This is typically why a lot of loser men fall into this category, because a lot of the times loser men are responsible men. And if you're a responsible man, to a certain extent, you may not say it outright or verbally. If you're a responsible man, everybody's held accountable, or everybody's held to everybody's held to a standard of sorts, basically, at the end of the day, when it comes to it. And the sad part about that is having everybody, when you're responsible, to have responsibility, that requires discipline. To be a responsible person, it requires discipline. And if you have discipline, people notice that discipline and they notice it about you. Now, what ends up happening is either people try to exploit that discipline or responsibility of you, or they basically call you names. The sad part about that, what I've noticed about a lot of these guys that are quote unquote losers or lames, is typically all the cool kids lean on them for answers and homework so they can pass their fucking tests or get a good grade on their homework, basically. Every single last one of them lean on this person low key, or every single last one of them are being tutored by this person publicly or low key at the end of the day. So the sad part about that is all these quote unquote Chads and Stacys get tutored by all these losers at the end of the day. And I've actually met a lot of I've met a lot of Chads and or Stacys who end up liking these quote unquote losers, or and they don't want to admit their feelings about these actual losers. I've met Chads who literally dated women who were seen like nerds or nerdy women or women that were highly intelligent, because they, for some odd reason, there was something about their personality that they found attractive. I've also met females who started gaining feelings for that nerdy kid or that intelligent kid because they no longer, but they don't want to admit it in public. And the sad part about that, how they are with that person is different from how they treat them in public, I've noticed. And if you ever notice the dichotomy, because people are worried about how they look in high school, which is pretty much Facebook. Basically, think of Facebook like high school. You got the popular kids, you got the not so popular kids, and everybody else in between. Basically, that's basically Facebook. Facebook is basically high school all over again. Facebook is basically college all over again, basically. is the best way I can describe it to you, or a fraternity, or a sorority, all over again. It's basically, that's all Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Twitch, all this other great shit. That's all it really is at the end of the day. It's basically high school all over again, is the best way to look at it. So typically, everybody tries their hand at it because they want to be popular and they want to be that person, or they want to be the cool kid, basically, at the end of the day. When in fact, not everybody can be the cool kid, and not everybody's going to be able to move on to be the cool kid, basically. Only there's a select few of people that'll be the cool kid for all intents and purposes. At the end of the day, the reason why they're the cool kid is because they capitulate to everybody and they tell everybody what they want to hear so they can stay at the top. They never really go against the grain or rock the boat. They basically capitulate to everybody else under them so they can keep their viewership or their viewers so they can feel special. And anytime they lose some viewers, they change it up a bit so they can get those viewers back. It's pretty much how it works at the end of the day. So typically, the people at top are always making shit and content so they can keep their viewers happy, when in fact, your content should be for the embetterment of your viewers, not to keep your viewers happy. That's typically what I believe about content and when you make content at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that think they're lames when they're in fact really not lames. This is a video that I'm going to be doing later on at like 1:30 in the morning Eastern Standard Time about this shit on this very topic, basically. So look for that live stream to pop at like 1:30 in the morning. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, the only reason why men are losers is because there's two types of them. There's men that hold women accountable verbally and physically. Then there's men that hold women accountable inadvertently and indirectly based on their personality and how they carry themselves. So there are men like me that just hold women accountable and hold flames to their feet on a regular basis. We just flame motherfuckers on a regular basis. And then there's men whose personalities and characteristics warrant everybody to be responsible and accountable around them. Like a good example, most losers are either men who hold women accountable and tell you about their misdeeds and all the shit that they do. And then there's men who are very responsible and very disciplined who are losers, loser men. And the reason why they get called losers, like I said, is because women don't want to be held accountable, nor can they live up to these standards. Therefore, they're losers for this reason. This is typically why women date fucked up people like they are, the fucked up men that they date, because they don't have to be held accountable, and instead they can hold that man accountable. This is typically why they date fuckboys and Chads and Tyrones and people who have no accountability whatsoever. Typically, all these men have no accountability, so therefore they can actually hold them accountable because they themselves don't want to be held accountable. They want to be the people holding other people accountable. Is basically the best way I can describe to people in those categories. Let it be women, let it be Chads, let it be the fuckboys. They like to hold everybody else accountable, but they don't want to be accountable their very self. They typically all have bitch stink for all intents and purposes, and they never want to be held accountable at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, this is typically something you don't want or you don't need. This is something you don't want or don't need in your life for this very reason. You don't need somebody that won't be held accountable or that refuses to be held accountable or can't be accountable for their actions, that lack discipline, who lacks accountability and or responsibility. Not responsibility, but who lacks the ability to be responsible for all intents and purposes. Because if a person is not responsible, you don't set yourself up for failure. So a good example of that is if you date a woman who lacks responsibility or lacks discipline, it's your fault you're dating that fucking woman. If If you know that woman's not responsible and or disciplined, it is your fucking fault for continuing that relationship with that woman, whether you like it or not. Same thing goes for women who try to avoid being accountable for the bullshit that they do. If they lack the accountability, they lack the responsibility, and they lack the responsibility or responsibleness or the drive to remotely be disciplined at the end of the day. So what you're running into is a lot of men. Nice, hidden. So what you're running into is a lot of men who are having problems. A lot of women and a lot of men who are having problems with being held accountable or not wanting to be held accountable. This is basically the safe. This is the everybody gets a trophy people. This is the I need a safe space people, or I feel offended by some stupid shit that somebody said to me people. This is technically the group of people in the society that we're growing up with now. At the end of the day. So you can't deal with people who lack accountability. You can't deal with people who lack discipline. You can't deal with people who don't want to be accountable or responsible at all. Because if they want to act like they're not responsible for shit, they typically suffer from bitch think. And I've said this multiple times when it comes to men. There's a lot of men who suffer from bitch think. There's a lot of men who suffer from not wanting to be held accountable for their actions, or not wanting to be disciplined, or not wanting to be responsible for their own actions, or responsible for any fucking thing. They want to pretend like they've done nothing wrong, and they want to treat it as such that you did everything wrong. This is typically how women think when it comes to men that are losers. You're wrong, or you're a loser, or you're mean, or you're abusive, or you hurt my feelings, or all this other great shit. That's basically the same thing that a lot of these men have, basically. You hurt their fifis, therefore you have to suffer. So now counterculture comes, basically. And these are the people that fall under cancel culture and shit like that, for all intents and purposes. But, it's one of those things where that's basically why women don't like to be held accountable, or why women are the way they are, or why women typically refer to men as losers, because they're afraid themselves to be held accountable. They're afraid themselves to be responsible and or disciplined. It is all it really is, because women don't want to be responsible or disciplined because they live in a day and age where they don't have to be responsible or disciplined for the stupid shit that they do. This is typically why you get laws where, a woman can accuse you of rape if she had too much to drink, even though you both had too much to drink, and she's not a consenting adult, but you were, despite the fact that you both were drunk, and you probably were more drunk than her. So you're responsible for her stupidity and the decisions that she make on impulse. It is what it is. This is typically why a lot of women end up sleeping with ugly men after, when the alcohol is on, basically, or men that they normally wouldn't sleep with because their inhibitions are lower. Even men do this shit too, because their inhibitions are low enough so they'll fuck any fucking thing for all intents and purposes at the end of the day. And it is what it is. And this is typically why you run into all these types of people who do stupid shit like this on a regular basis. And then there's men that don't want to admit to sleeping with ugly women because they're embarrassed by sleeping with ugly women. I personally never slept with an ugly woman because I've never been impaired enough to sleep with an ugly woman. And I typically have standards. And this is typically across the board for any fucking thing. I typically don't use any drugs, nor do I use any alcohol. I use alcohol, but I don't use it enough to be impaired or think that people think that an ugly bitch looks like Halle Berry at the end of the day, when in fact I know she doesn't. So I'm typically a very responsible person when it comes to alcohol. I'm a very disciplined person when it comes to alcohol, and I'm a very disciplined person when it comes to my sleep schedule and my diet. At the end of the day, I'm very disciplined. Um, at the end of the day. And it's okay if you don't. Um, but it's one of those things where a lot of men fall into this trap for this very reason. A lot of men fall into these club cultures or bar cultures because they can be easily manipulated into doing nice thing for a pretty face or a smile or a woman just flirting for them. This is typically why a lot of men fell out of the bar culture for this reason. And only people that go to bar cultures are men that are cheating, who need side pieces or are cheating on their significant others, or men that are fuckboys, basically, typically go to bars. And fake ass gangsters, they go too, who want to act like they got this huge entourage when in fact they ain't shit basically themselves. Because it's one of those things where at the end of the day, this is who they pretend to be. So, yeah, women. What's up, Forrest J. Burns? Sorry I missed you, even though I glanced over your comment and I didn't say your name. But typically you run into a lot of women who do this. What's up, No Sweetheart? And whoever else walked into the lovely stream at the moment in time that I didn't mention, and I'm trying to look back on. But this is typically the type of people that you're running into in this day and age at the end of the day. Another topic that I want to speak about on this one is I've already covered the female projection, loser men / accountability men, basically. So this is typically the type of men that women fear. So they fear the loser men and they fear the accountability men because they themselves fear being held accountable and fear being responsible and fear being disciplined human beings for all intents and purposes. Because to deal with a person like that, that requires you to be responsible, disciplined, and accountable. So they basically use this very thing, this projection strategy, to say men are scared of strong, independent women as a shield to actually shield their actual insecurities of dealing with men who are like this. This is typically why, various groups in the manosphere catch hell and catch flack for this very reason, like MGTOW, SYSBM, Red Pill Men, for this very reason, because women are scared of being held accountable for this very reason. Women are scared of being, responsible or, disciplined for this very reason. So they project that onto men, basically saying men do what in fact they do. They are scared to death of men who hold them accountable. They're scared to death of responsible men. They're scared to death of disciplined men at the end of the day. So if a man has a schedule, women are scared of a man with a schedule. If a man has a consistent schedule, it might be consistent, but he's not breaking it for her. And that requires a high level of discipline and responsibility to balance that fucking schedule. So women are typically scared of men who are not willing to break responsibility for them. They'll only do it if a man would only do it if it benefits them. Like a good example of that is, I was having a hard time. I didn't feel like traveling to Canada to deposit money into my account. So a good example of this, I didn't feel like traveling to Canada to deposit money in my account because I just didn't feel like it and I felt lazy. So what I did is called up one of my female friends and asked her to cash out me money, and I gave her money, the same amount of money that she cashed out me. Basically, I have this money. I don't feel like driving to Canada because I'm lazy and I don't feel like it, and I want you to cash out me this money, and I'll meet you to give you the money. Basically, what she go and do? She literally cashed out me the money before I even gave her the money. Didn't even get to meet her yet. All because I didn't feel like driving to Canada. This is the type of female friends that I literally have. Cash out me the money, meet me up another day or a later date and time or another time, basically, because they trust that I'm actually going to give them the money. So these are the type of female friends that I literally have in my corner, where they literally trust me enough to cash at me a large amount of money, knowing that I'm going to give them the money back because they're responsible women. Now, any lesser woman wouldn't have did no shit like that because they're lesser women. That's typically how they are. There's no woman out there who claims you're strong and independent that's finna do some shit like that, basically, because they have trust issues. So they're not finna do shit like that. Like, she literally cash out, how much money are you giving me? Okay, that amount, I'll cash app you the money now. And we'll meet another day because it's raining or snowing or other shit like that. Now, this strong, independent woman would have met you at a bus stop or met you some damn where to basically get the money from you because they're not that secure and they're not that disciplined for all intents and purposes to wait like that. Whereas other women in my circle, in my corner, are literally like cash app. Like, can you at least have the money first? No, I trust you, Tico. You're always honest about your shit. I trust you. And that's literally the women I got in my corner. Then I got the fake ass women who would do that. There's the fake ass women who would actually ask you to meet them with the money so they can cash app you the money. These are women that are insecure because they lack discipline and responsibility, basically. And it is what it is. Moving right along to the next topic. Interesting men and sexy men to women. There's a difference between interesting men and sexy men to women. A man that holds a woman accountable is an interesting man to a woman. A man who is responsible, a man that's responsible and disciplined is interesting to women. A sexy man is a man that she can hold accountable, even though she lacks all the accountability in the world, all the responsibility in the world, and all the discipline in the world. She's holding that man accountable so she can make up for her insecurities and flaws, basically, at the end of the day, is what it comes down to. So a man that's interesting to a woman is a man that she really can't control, or a man that she's scared of for all intents and purposes for this very reason. This is typically why a lot of men fall into the creepy category, even though they're not creepy, because she's scared of them because she would never live up to those standards. She would never live up to the discipline or the responsibility that man holds within himself at the end of the day. It's pretty much how it works. So what's up, no sweetheart? So what ends up happening with that is you typically have a bunch of women who don't want to be held responsible, but they want to hold men responsible. So it's that dichotomy where they don't want to be held responsible, but they want to hold all the men responsible in their lives. And this typically goes back to control. A woman is called. It all goes back to control at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. Women can control certain things in life when it comes to men, and typically the men that they love and find sexy or interested in, basically, and want to have sex with, basically, they can actually have control over those men because they have access to those men to blow up their phones to say the stupid shit to those men. Whereas a man like me, I'll hang up on you in a heartbeat, or I'll block your number like I'm Freaky Jersey Tales blocking some goofy bitch, basically. It is what it is. So women like men, just like why women like men in prison or criminals, basically, because they lack the moral compass that would literally, they lack moral agency and the compass to actually hold themselves accountable. So therefore, women can act like the mother or the boss of that man, basically. This is typically why women like fuck boys and pretty boys and, bad boys and shit like that, because they can literally hold them accountable for shit that they're not willing to hold themselves accountable for. Whereas you can't hold somebody accountable if they already have the discipline and they're responsible human beings and they're very accountable human beings. You can't hold them accountable because you yourself can't live up to their expectations or their deeds in life to remotely hold them accountable for any fucking thing. So what you do is you basically hold somebody who lacks accountability accountable for their actions. This is typically why women go after men like this at the end of the day, because they can hold them accountable and they don't want to be held accountable. This is typically why you got the men always complaining about, you know, men are dogs or men are trash or men are this, men are that. And this is typically why you got the women that complain about where have all the good men gone, or where have you know you know stupid shit like that on a regular basis, where you got women complaining about dumb shit like that when in fact they're not responsible, nor are they accountable, nor are they disciplined to remotely, for that to even remotely come out of the side of their fucking mouth. Because at the end of the day, when they say shit like this, they're literally projecting who they are as human beings to you, basically. So anytime you see a woman write something or say something like, where have all the good men gone? Or why men are losers or dogs, basically, they're basically projecting their very behavior out there themselves. So when a woman says, why are men losers and dogs? They're projecting that they're losers and they're dogs, basically, for men like this, basically. When women say, where have all the good men gone? You're basically saying that they're not a good person, and they're not in a good headspace, and they're not responsible enough to get a good man, basically, is what it really is at the end of the day. Now I'm getting into the psychological crux of this shit. That's basically all that's really saying. They're not responsible enough themselves, they're not accountable enough themselves, and they're not disciplined enough themselves to get the good men that they want. At the end of the day, that's all it is. That's all it would ever be. So when you hear women say various things about men, all it is her projecting her thoughts and her bullshit and her insecurities onto men. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of good men out there. There's a lot of responsible men out there. There's a lot of men that are on their purpose and on their grind out there. The sad part about that is they don't want to acknowledge it, because that will require them to take responsibility and be more disciplined and accountable for their decision-making skills, when in fact they don't want to be accountable for the decision-making skills. They don't want to be accountable for any of this shit, so they basically make up all this other extracurricular bullshit and project their insecurities out there on paper, or out there in public, or out there on social media. Where have all the good men gone? What that actually means, like I said, is I'm not responsible enough to actually find a good man. I'm not disciplined enough to find a good man, nor am I accountable enough to have a good man in my life. It is what it is. This is pretty much the dichotomy. It's not about it's not about the Chads and Tyrones. It's not about any of this shit. It's all about the psychology of being held responsible, or being held accountable, or being held, having some discipline within yourself. Because at the end of the day, most women lack discipline, responsibility, and accountability. At the end of the day, I would say about 97% of women lack accountability, discipline, and lack responsibility at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, if they did have some responsibility, they wouldn't be in half the messes that they're in, or they wouldn't be in the continuous pattern downward spiral that they're in now, for all intents and purposes, if they did have the discipline, responsibility, and the accountability that they claim to have in their lives. Because at the end of the day, you can't sit up here and tell me that you're a responsible person, but you're a single mom. Or you're a responsible person, but you cheated on your significant other and now you're single. Or you're a responsible person, but you don't have your finances in order and you're always broke. Or you're a responsible, disciplined, and accountable person, but your life is in shambles. See? And the sad part about that is when it comes down to it, they are low value. And at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, a lot of these women who are beautiful are nothing more than average at best. In the famous words of Mr. Kevin Samuels, average at best. Though I've always said that about women, I'll typically say they're a Colombian 4 or 5, 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, I'll typically say they're either a Colombian 3, 4, or 5. Basically, is my nice way of saying you're average at best. It's probably more savage because they don't stack up to a lot of the women, and that's typically my nice way of saying they're average at best, basically, or below average for all intents and purposes. And that's basically how I look at women and everybody in a nutshell at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, you get ranked on that scale of what I'm used to when it comes to women. If you don't fit that scale, you can't call yourself a 10, a 9, an 8, a 7, or any of that for all intents and purposes. Because you got your score, and I'm actually rate you at the score I believe you to be at the end of the day. So it's one of those things. No, sweetheart's a nut. I found all 90%. He said, I found all 97% of them. Yeah, basically, it is what it is. That's basically who you're running into when it comes to women. There's very few women in this world that are actually very responsible. I'm willing to go as far as to say 1% of the female population are responsible, accountable, and have discipline. Only 1% of the female population have responsibility, accountability, and are very disciplined in this whole entire fucking world. The rest, the other 2%, either have some discipline and most times fall off like an addict, like a person that quit their drugs. But think of like these 2% as this. Think of it like this. A person that, that goes like 100 days clean and sober, basically. Then all of a sudden something happens. They fall off the wagon train and they got to start all back over again. That's the other 2% of women, basically, in this world. They do good, then they fall off the wagon eventually. Then they try to get back on the wagon again, basically. So it's women that basically get on the wagon, fall off the wagon, get back on the wagon, then eventually fall off the wagon again. Whereas the vast 97% of women never were on the wagon, never were accountable, never was looking to be accountable, responsible, or disciplined, basically. Where there's only 1% of women who are disciplined, accountable, and responsible in this whole entire world. Then you got the 2% of women who have some discipline, but can't quite stay on a narrow path and get there for all intents and purposes. That's typically the economy of women in this world. Most men date the 97% and don't even realize they're dating 97% because, chameleon behavior, basically. It's sad, but it's true. Then you got the other 2% who are trying their best to, but because of their female nature, they fall off the wagon over and over again. That 2% just keep falling off the fucking wagon, basically. Then you got women, the 1% of women in this world who are literally responsible, accountable, and disciplined in this world, is what it is. So it's one of those things where those are the 3 groups of women that you'll run into in this world at the end of the day. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some good women who are just ditzy and stupid that fall for stupid shit. And they typically are too stupid to have accountability or to have responsibility or to be disciplined because they basically just float through life as airheads, basically. There are those women. So there is that category of women, which is a subsection of the 97% of the women that are 90%, basically. They're basically, it'd be like somebody that's just too stupid to learn something, or too stupid to comprehend, or or just that is just so very carefree that No matter what happens, they're just go with the flow. They're so carefree that they just go with the flow. There's that group of women too, basically. Also within the 97% that they're just so carefree. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. Like I have a friend still till this day. She is a fucking goofball. She is a ditzy goofball. But she's the funniest ditzy goofball I've ever fucking met in my life. And she goes, and she'll even admit that she's stupid sometimes. And she's blonde, mind you. She is blonde. She's a pure blonde. And she would actually admit to me that she's very stupid sometimes. And she does get into some shit because she's just too ditzy to comprehend at the time when it's actually happening that she's getting into stupid shit. And she's like the funniest, goofiest woman I've ever met. And she's very honest, but she's just so carefree. You would never know that she's like you would think she's a smart person because she's so carefree. But when she sit here and talk to me, she is the goofiest, funniest woman I've ever met. That's typically that's one woman that I can literally say. That's one woman that I can literally say that is like in that category, but is legit like just carefree as fuck. Don't really think about too much shit and then just go with the flow with everything. She's kind of like me with best friends. Like a good example of that if MGTOW on the Wind says we're going to go decapitate some Antifa people, I go, that's a dumb idea. I got my knife. Let's go. That's basically that same concept. Basically, go with the flow type of person because I'm typically a go with the flow type of person, but I'm gonna go with the flow type of person within reason for all intents and purposes. Unless I think it'll benefit me in the future or end or it'll benefit me in any given time. I'm typically go with the flow type of person. Yeah, true story. Forrest J. Burns. But the sad part about that, she's never caused me any drama. She's never been a headache as a friend. We always have conversations about various things, and it's just the funniest shit in the world. And when you listen to her, she is so fucking funny because her personality is so bubbly, and the shit that she gets herself into is just the funniest shit in the world. She's basically like a bubbly, goofy, stupid Tico Tren, basically. Like let's just say, like the shit that I get myself into might be crazy, but she gets herself into even crazier shit. Like you might think like, Tico going to Tijuana and being thrown in a trunk by a woman is crazy beyond comparison. This woman got crazier stories than I do. And I plan on having her on the show one day so y'all can hear some of the crazy, funny shit that comes out of her fucking mouth. It is the funniest, craziest shit in the world. And I'm always on the floor laughing and dying at her. She goes, no, it really happened. I go, I know. I've met you. I've hung with you several times. I know it happens. And she like, if you're hanging with this woman, anything and everything that you could possibly see on TV or in a cartoon or an anime series that can go wrong in those serieses can go wrong in this woman's lives. This is typically the type of woman I'm speaking about. She is funny as fucking shit. And her life is funny as fucking shit. And I plan on writing a book about her life and the shit that she got into and the shit that I got into with her. Like a good example of the shit that I used to get into with her was we went to a club and it was back when we were both 20 and you had to be 21 to get in. She was 19 and I was 20, but you had to be 21 to get into this club, right? So now, mind you, she's the goofy, bubbly, big-breasted blonde. They're all natural, though. So she's the goofy, bubbly, big-breasted blonde that normally you wouldn't even blink twice and we just let her in the club. But apparently this club had strict orders, so they didn't let her in the club. So she was pouting because she couldn't get in the club. So I said, I concoct a plan to actually get us in the club, despite the fact that we were underage. Okay, cool. So we went to the back door, and we sat on the banister and we were talking. So I fell over. I grabbed the empty cup. I fell over, and I fell over the banister and I fell down. And everybody turned to look. I go, "Damn, guy, you knocked the drink out of my fucking hand. Damn, dude. Now I gotta go buy a new drink." So the sad part about that is everybody in that general vicinity literally bought me a free drink because they thought they were the ones who knocked the drink out of my hand. And my bubbly friend literally climbed over the gate while everybody was looking the other way at me, talking about damn and buying me drinks and shit like that on the little patio. So now I'm getting free drinks for me and my friend at this club because, you know, I think like I got knocked over and they knocked over my drink. So now all 17 of these people are buying me drinks now. And I gave half of them to my friend because she climbed over the banister after I pulled off the basically the stunt. We ended up staying in that club till close basically, and it was the funnest shit in the whole entire world. She got into some shit, she got into some more shit, and it was like just the funniest shit in the world. I drank a couple beers, you know. She had a lot of drinks that, you know, she had like what I think I drank what like only what like 5 of those drinks out of the 17 that was bought for me because people felt responsible for knocking over my drink. She drank the other 12. She is funny as fuck when she is drunk. She literally called me Terrence and Phillip on the way home from the fucking club. We had a blast, Terrence and Phillip. We had a blast. I'm like, I am not Terrence and Phillip. Now, for any of you who don't know, this is when South Park was just popping off and becoming popular. And Terrence and Phillip, the 2 Canadian actors on the show, TV show that they watch on the TV show, were popping and popular. So she called me anytime she was drunk as hell. She used to call me Terrence and Phillip. So that was my nickname. So yeah, she was talking about this Terrence and Phillip and this, that, and the other, and you're Terrence and Phillip, and that's your name now. And she's just in the car, just ditzy as fuck, and just having fun, having the time of her life because she's about like 12 sheets to the wind because she didn't have like fucking 12. No, she didn't have like 12 Long Island iced teas. I didn't have like 5 beers, and she just sheets to the fucking wind. We just had a blast basically. And like she's the most ditziest person in the whole entire world as we're driving home. That's neither here nor there. But typically, that's basically the type of women within that 97% of women that you can run into. Like they're bad, but they're not really bad because these are typically the type of women who go through life carefree and end up on the news as like missing or dead or, you know, decapitated in another country basically, or was killed by some tragic incident or kidnapped or work as a sex slave in another country because they're so ditzy and carefree. So you get those women basically. There's like they don't even know what accountability is. They've pretty much floated through life airheaded and bubbly and with a bubbly personality and, you know, shit like that for all intents and purposes. And it's just, there's just the funniest group of women in the world. But then you got the vast majority of those women that are just like, who just want to hold everybody else accountable and don't want to be accountable for their actions. Then you got the people that are so ditzy and so airheaded that they don't even know what accountability, responsibility, and discipline is. So you got those group of women within that 97% of women. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, you're always going to run into these type of women, no matter what it is, because they're a vast majority of all the women. They're 97% of the women in the whole entire fucking world, basically. So you're always going to run into these women. Then you're going to run into the women who will pretend. Well, you're going to run into the 2% of women in this world who are going to try to have some discipline, but always fall off the will fall off the wagon every now and that's going to fall off the wagon every now and again for all intents and purposes. So you got women that try to be disciplined but fall off the wagon who lack the mental fortitude to stay on the wagon. Like they'll stay on the wagon for a while and then eventually something will happen and they'll fall off the wagon due to stress or some unforeseen circumstances in their lives that help them to fall off the wagon. Then you got the 1% of women in the world who are literally responsible, accountable, and have discipline for all intents and purposes. So that's typically the type of women that you'll run into. And the sad part about it, like I said, the men who are disciplined, accountable, the men who are disciplined and have, who are disciplined, who are disciplined and responsible are very interesting to women. The men who hold them accountable are interesting to women too, as well. But sometimes depending on who you are, you might fall into, sexual men, basically. That interesting men and sexual men, basically, are the last two categories I'm talking about here. So basically, you'll fall into a category. Either you could be, if you are accountable, you can either fall into the loser shit. You can fall into the loser. You can fall into the loser, mean, hate women category, basically, or you can fall into the sexually interesting. You can fall into the sexual man, basically, category, or you can fall into the interesting man category, basically. At the end of the day, usually the interesting men are basically those men who are responsible, accountable, and women just want them, but they don't want to be disciplined, accountable, or responsible. Whereas the men that they actually want are the men who lack this responsibility or this accountability, and they want to hold them accountable and responsible and want them to have discipline when in fact they never had it at the end of the day. It is what it is. Any questions before I end this lovely live stream? I would like to thank Captain Brandon Punk and Horror for this lovely topic that I talked about, and the topics that came out of this actual topic, and the various stories and points that I actually brought up to actually talk about this topic. I would like to thank him for, because it's actually much funner when you can actually put a story to a lot of this shit for all intents and purposes. It's very fun when you can put like an actual story in your life to all this shit. This guy. Yeah, true story. Yeah, sounds about right. Where's Jay Burns? But it's one of those things where you have to always be responsible and accountable, because the sad part about that, the responsible, accountable men are the ones who maintain society. They're the ones who maintain and keep the infrastructure in society going. Because at the end of the day, there's not really too many responsible, independent. I mean, there's not too many responsible, accountable, disciplined women in this world. So if all the men basically stopped doing work, the world would fucking collapse around us, and shit wouldn't get done, and shit would just be fucked up for the rest of our lives if men just stopped doing the shit that, if men just stopped for a day, stop doing the shit that they have to do to keep the society running at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, women might complain about men, but deep down inside, they're only scared and jealous of men, because if it wasn't for men, the society wouldn't be what it is today. I'm actually in my afterthoughts, by the way, of this stream. If it wasn't for the men that hold this society together, hold this world together, and the men who do trucking, who literally get to the supermarket on a hairpin edge to actually get your supplies to you, this society will fall the fuck apart. This society would not be the society it is. There would be no Maytags being fixed. There would be no refrigerators being fixed. There would be no electricity going on. There would be no subways, no cars, no buses, no mass transit, no fucking nothing. Nothing would be repaired. Nothing would be mowed. Nothing would be manicured. Nothing would be taken care of. Nothing. There would be nothing around if there was no men to do the shit that they did. If there was no men to sacrifice their lives and have the discipline, responsibility, and the accountability that they do, there would not be no America. Because that even extends into like wars. If men weren't accountable, disciplined, and responsible, we would be losing wars and we would not be a country right now, because we would be all fucked up and owned by somebody the fuck else if it wasn't for the responsible responsible men in this life. If it wasn't for the responsible, dedicated, honorable men in this life, we wouldn't have a society. We wouldn't be a country. We would be a part of another country still. We would still be known as, the United States of Great Britain if it wasn't for the hard, dedicated men that fought for the very freedoms that we love and cherish dearly at the end of the day. So, at the end of the day, I would like to thank all those responsible, dedicated, accountable, disciplined men for keeping a society running perfectly like a well-oiled machine. All the men who do the trucking, who literally make it there on a hairpin's edge to make sure that lovely customers have their supplies that they need to go shopping on a regular basis. Because without you, we wouldn't have any of this shit. Because what people don't realize is all stores and everything in stock at stores will only last up to 6 days. I think it was like 3 to 5 days if truckers stopped what they were doing. It would only last 3 to 5 days. Might be 6, but I'm going to say it's about 3 to 5 days of supplies in that store if truckers stopped what they were doing at the end of the day. So, to those men and to all the men who do shit behind the scenes, who don't get the recognition that they deserve, to all the men in the military who fight all the conflicts, despite the fact that sometimes they might be bullshit, who fight for a way of life and the American dollar to remain the actual currency in the world, because oil and pharmaceuticals. I'd like to thank all those men. And at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, it's kind of like in the famous words, when it comes to men, is basically in the famous words of RPM. When the lights go out, feminism does too. Because that's actually very true. When shit stopped working, feminism will stop working too. The minute a man stops doing what he needs to do for a woman to enjoy all her amenities and everything that she has in life, that's when the feminism stops. That's when the ring starts and the bitching the planes. Because at the end of the day, all this shit creates entitlement for women to do and say the dumb shit that they're able to do in this life. It's sad, but it's true. Everything that we say, everything that men do in a society creates the illusion that women have the ability to say and do and feel and believe the dumb shit that they believe in life and make the stupid mistakes that they believe in life due to that, because they have this safety net and the security of the men behind the scenes who handle society properly. Because people always talk about rich people and people do this and wealthy people. The sad part about that is wealthy people need these men to do their jobs so they can remain wealthy and or rich at the end of the day. Corporations need these very men so they can stay wealthy and rich at the end of the year. So all these corporate people, all these CEOs, CFOs, COOs, all these people, presidents of companies, board members, all these people need all these people down here so they can keep their positions and keep everything running smoothly and keep their millions and billions of dollars at the end of the fucking day. Because if it wasn't for all these people down here, they wouldn't have any of the shit that they have. There would be no rich people if they didn't have the low skilled workers or all the workers under them to make their businesses what they are today. It is what it is. So at the end of the day, the most important men in this world are the unsung heroes. The most important men and the most honorable men are the men who very rarely get praise. They're the men who very rarely, who would do the dirty job, despite the fact that it's a dirty job. They do it because it needs to be done, and they have the discipline to do it. And it's true. If it wasn't for men, women would still be in caves fighting over berries and nuts and food, basically, or who gets the kill. And they'd be too busy fighting over it that nobody would get the kill, and the whole entire society would starve at the end of the day. And it is what it is when it comes down to it. But yeah, that's my stream for today. I thank everybody for coming. I thank all the lurkers in the background. I would like to thank all the people who dropped in and dropped out, and all the people who remained the whole entire stream, or people who remained in the came to the stream, fell out, and came back in the stream. I would like to appreciate all of you guys, and anybody who's listening that's a female that's probably listening in the background because they're scared to say something because there's a bunch of men that they've seen in the chat. Thank you for coming and watching my videos. Oh, I'd like to thank the haters that's going to hate on this video, and all the trolls that's going to hate on this video as well too. Because you're a part of my algorithm at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. Even if you thumbs down me, all it does is just pushes me harder in the algorithm, because that lets YouTube know that my opinion actually mattered more when you do that to my lovely trolls and haters. That just lets them know that that's how that works. So I'm just letting you know that's how that literally works. But y'all be blessed. Have a good one. Be safe and treat yourselves like milk and nut, but spoil yourselves. This is Vedic Ghost. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share this video and many other videos on my channel. And be blessed and have a good one, men and women. Peace.